Welcome back, Internet, to another Reddit story. We're back to malicious compliance. Following directions to the letter, even if it's really the wrong way of doing things. Alright, let's get into it. Want to extend my hours without telling me? Okay then. This happened about a month ago, and I finally got around to writing it out. I work in a retail store that rhymes with souls. Recently, there's been some real turmoil at my specific location. The scheduling manager is fantastic at looking at availability and maximum hours and writing the schedule to fit perfectly with everyone's needs considered. However, our general manager is the one with the final say of the schedule. It's become a huge problem with the management that the good workers are being scheduled between 5 to 10 hours more than their availability allows. This always seems to affect me. In the past 3 or so months, I've had to go to management countless times and demand my schedules fit my availability. Typically, this is an irritation and really not something I want to deal with. But it's not anything overly ridiculous. However, about a month ago, I went into my shift and saw that my shift was manually penciled in and extended another 15 minutes and signed by the GM. This really upset me. I feel like employee hours are to be stuck to. What if I had an appointment right after work? I'm angry and ready to storm into the manager's office and ask what the reasoning is and how this feels really unethical. But the more I looked at the schedule, the more I formulated a plan for malicious compliance. Halfway through my shift, I walked into my GM's office and talked to him. It's not verbatim, but it went something like this. Me. Hi, why did you extend my shift without telling me? GM. We needed coverage until the next shift comes in at 3. I understand that, but I really don't like my schedule being changed with no notification or asking me. I know, but we need someone to stay until your department until 3. I figured you wouldn't mind. I do, but I'll stay for just this one time. Say, this means I work 7 hours, right? Right. And isn't 7 hours the minimum to have a lunch break? Yes. Well, I'll take my lunch now. I leave and clock out for 30 minutes. I think the GM finally realized that by extending my hours by 15 minutes, he gave me a 30-minute off-the-clock lunch break, therefore making it a net loss of 15 minutes of work. The best part? When I took my lunch, the department I was working at was completely packed with customers. They were all needing help and had to ask staff from other departments because I wasn't going to help while clocked out. That last 15 minutes, completely silent and peaceful. So yeah, telling a company that you're only available between a certain amount of times means that you're only available between a certain amount of times. So them pretty much ignoring this person's availability, yeah, that's not right. The more people get away with something, the more they'll expect it. So if any of you guys have any of these issues about availability, like, unless you speak up about it, they're going to expect you to just be available whenever. I've had a couple of experiences at the same place, actually, at this Wendy's I worked at, where I had some scheduling issues. One time, I was working in the morning. I came in the morning before the store opened, to get prep work done, whatever. And I got there, and I walked in, and we had one extra person that was there. I'm like, what's going on? And the manager was there with the GM. The GM was just there on a visit. But the manager said, oh yeah, this person came in and thought that she worked, but now that she's here, you can go home. And I'm like, what? Yeah, you can go home. She's here, so you can go home. I'm like, well, I'm scheduled to work now. Why don't you send her home? And they were like, well, because she's already here and she's already starting to work. I look at the GM and he's pretty much just nodding along with what she's saying. So I'm like, okay. So I go home and I call Wendy's regional offices. So you got manager, you got store manager, you got district manager, and then you've got regional manager. And the regional manager was the guy I talked with. I actually talked to the guy. Like, they put me right through to him, which I thought was kind of amazing. But they put me right through to him, and I basically said, so I was scheduled, and I basically told him the same thing I just told you guys. And he was very receptive. He was a really nice guy. And He said, don't worry about it. We'll go ahead and get you your full pay for today, and I'll talk to the managers. So, yeah, the regional manager ended up calling the district manager, and the store manager is basically saying, what are you doing? That felt pretty good. A second time with the same store manager too. I was going back to college, and I needed my hours changed because I was full-time and I needed to go down to part-time, only available between these times. And they said okay. So I gave them my hours, and I come in the next week and I'm still scheduled 40 hours. I'm like, hey, you need to change this. They said, oh, sorry, we'll get you the next week. The next week it happens again, 40 hours, the same kind of hours. I'm like, what the heck? I go and I tell them, hey, I need to cut down my hours. I'm going back to school. The next week they said, oh yeah, don't worry, we'll work on it. The next week I came in and we had two separate people writing the schedule, and I was scheduled for like 56 hours. like two separate people writing the first and the back half of the same work week, which is just ridiculous if you think about it, because obviously they thought, oh, well, I'll just schedule Chris to work every day. So that's when I said, you know what, I quit. I can't deal with this. And they're like, no, we can fix the schedule. We can fix the schedule. And I'm like, well, I gave you guys like 3 chances. I told you what was going on, and you still didn't listen to my requests. So, see ya. The walkout always feels good until you get to your car and you start pulling away and you get that realization that, oh, I need a job. So, hindsight, probably shouldn't have done it like that, but it felt good for the 30 seconds between when I told him see ya until I got to my car. Yeah, anyway, on to the next story. Let me fix the grader's mistake for you. This is a story that happened a long time ago. When I was a master's student at a university, I also worked as a teaching assistant for a professor. In his class, there were also graders, who were undergraduate seniors. I created homework assignments and gave tutorial sessions. The graders were to grade homework papers, and they would submit graded papers to me to return to the students. If a student had a question regarding to the grading, it would have to be addressed to me. One day, a girl was unhappy with the grading of one of her homework problems, believing that there was an error with the grading of her work, and demanded that I fix the error. She wasn't very nice about it, so to say. She brought her paper over to me, as well as her boyfriend's paper. She showed me that her work was marked wrong and was awarded like 1 point out of 10. Her boyfriend's work was accepted and got something like 8 out of 10. Despite having a similar approach to hers, she gave both papers to me. There was indeed an error with the grading. As I looked over both papers carefully, I found that both results were wrong. The error was that the grader accepted the boyfriend's answer, maybe because the boyfriend's handwriting was awful and confused the grader or something. So I fixed the error as she had demanded. I removed some points from her boyfriend's paper and gave him a 1 out of 10, just like hers. She wasn't very happy about that, and I bet her boyfriend was very pissed off at her for showing his work to me. I could have ignored the boyfriend's incorrect grade, but, well, she wanted me to fix the grading. P.S. To everyone concerned about the boyfriend's consent, he was also there, but he observed us from a distance. He didn't take his paper back from the regrading pile. I don't know. For me, it always seemed like I got the benefit of the doubt on some grades. Probably because I was pleasant to talk with, you know, as far as the professors go. Like, I was always kind of a, you know, friendly person. So they're like, I knew what he meant there, which I didn't mind. But there was this one time I was in a early graphics program at Utah Valley University. It was just an introductory to, like, Photoshop. And I've worked with Photoshop for years, but I needed to take the class. Anyway, so there was an assignment where we had to do something with a picture. I couldn't remember what the assignment was, but I had taken a toddler's photo, and I drew on a virtual reality headset on the kid. This was back in the early 2000s, so I mean, it looked like a virtual boy on the kid's head. And I did something goofy with saying, like, hacking the Pentagon, downloading the whatever mainframe, you know, just like the kid was like super hacking and stuff. But it was stupid. But I got a incomplete on that assignment, And I did everything I was supposed to do. I did more than what I needed to because, like I said, basic Photoshop kind of class, and I knew Photoshop, so I was doing more advanced stuff with the photo, but I was given an incomplete on it. And the reasoning was that the instructor said one of my friends was in the Pentagon during 9/11 when one of the planes crashed into it. I'm like, did they die? No, but she was there. I'm like, wait, so I mentioned the word Pentagon with this little toddler doing a VR hacking kind of thing and saying that he was hacking the Pentagon, and you gave me an incomplete because I mentioned the word Pentagon. I was like, aren't you a little sensitive about this? I know it was probably like 3 or 4 years after it happened, but I'm like, I'm not saying the kid's like planting a bomb or anything like that. He was just like doing some sort of like, ooh, Matrix-y, like super hacking, you know. But yeah, it gave me an incomplete on that, and I had to redo the assignment, which was fine. It took me 20 minutes to do that first drawing, but yeah, I just kind of never got over that. I'm like, wow, people are really sensitive, especially when it even happened to her. It happened to one of her friends, and her friend was just in the building, and nothing happened to that friend. I thought that maybe I'm just being insensitive, but I thought that was just kind of like, really? You're really going to do that? Give me an incomplete on that? Oh, well, whatever. Thank you, Internet, for joining me on another Reddit story thing. Malicious Compliance. Hey, I told 2 stories. I don't know. I feel like when I add my own stories, it's almost like I'm reading someone else's story. So you got like, out of the 2 stories I told, you really got, what, 5 stories? But 3 of them were mine. So it should really be like, instead of r/malicious compliance, it should be u/Kyoto Combat, because I'm just basically telling my stories, but I don't know. I think they're interesting enough. Anyway, well, thanks for joining me. If you liked what you saw, thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, and share with a friend. And I'll see you guys in the next video. So until then, later, kids.